My name is Lianna Paris, and my capstone project is titled Creating Connections Through Art and Occupational Therapy and Its Impact on Identity and Belonging. I'm going to be addressing how art has been used as a meaningful therapeutic tool in occupational therapy since the profession originated. However, individuals living with disabilities continue to face barriers when it comes to accessing creative therapeutic environments that promote self expression, emotional regulation, and skill development. And this is where my capstone project comes into play. I decided to focus on program development as my concentration area because it's vital for the enhancement of occupational therapy as a profession to ensure that we continue to meet the evolving needs of the clients that we serve. I did this at Western Michigan University's Unified Clinics, specifically within 3 student-led occupational therapy enrichment services, which is the Work to Work, Skills for Living, and Pediatric clinics. And I did this alongside my site mentor, Susan Frisbee Yu, who has extensive experience as an occupational therapist in academic, outpatient, and community based settings. She's the clinic coordinator, and she's also a site supervisor for level 1 fieldwork students in the occupational therapy program. I conducted a literature review of my capstone project to really ensure that the program I was developing was going to be supported by relevant research. And this began by looking at experiences in creating art and how it's been used as a powerful tool for supporting emotional regulation, self expression, and social skills, and that group art programs have been shown to combat social isolation and promote confidence in individuals living with disabilities through the act of creating art itself. I also explored the concept of place, which is not just a physical setting, but it's a meaningful environment that's shaped by social connections and personal experiences. And group art programs really help individuals to feel this sense of belonging and support so that they can be in an environment where they feel they're able to express themselves. This ties in really well to the next section of my literature review, which is focused on a central occupational therapy framework: doing, being, becoming, and belonging. And this applied really well to my project and what I was advocating for throughout my doctoral capstone experience of using art as a meaningful occupation. Arguably most important was reviewing literature that addressed barriers to artistic expression and social participation for individuals living with disabilities. And this really exposed broader societal and structural issues like accessibility and negative stigmas that individuals living with disabilities often face. And this is where the role of occupational therapy in art based interventions comes in, and how we use creativity as a therapeutic tool to support emotional well being, identity development. And we often suggest using art as a coping skill or meaningful occupation because of the benefits that it's been shown to have for individuals. I conducted a needs assessment prior to beginning my experience at Unified Clinics to kind of get a feel for the strengths of my projects, any challenges that I'm going to face, and then how can I adapt to those. So this began by exploring the relationship between art therapy and occupational therapy, and I did this through an interview with a certified art therapist, Genevieve Wilson, who works in the Kalamazoo area outside of Unified Clinics. And our conversation really focused on a common challenge she identified as getting individuals to open up verbally, and how it's through providing choice, fostering a safe, non judgmental space, that she's really able to see people open up and really grow into themselves. It was also important to identify existing needs and areas for development at my capstone site with my site mentor, Susan Frisbee Yu. And this began by a want for a structured group program that incorporated therapeutic and creative interventions while also supporting skill development. And this began by just focusing on the work to work clinic at Unified Clinics. Although, as the experience progressed, we felt that my project would apply really well to 2 additional clinics, which is the Skills for Living and Pediatric clinics, just to further use art as a valuable tool despite differences in age or lived experiences. I also gained insight into program development and art based intervention programs with a previous capstone student, Alexis Bailey, as well as her site mentor, Carol Scharfenberg, who developed an art based intervention program titled Wild Wheels, which was then implemented at the Center of Disability Services. Our conversation really focused on how to make art approachable for participants because it's not uncommon for people to be apprehensive about engaging in creating art, let alone sharing that with other people. So we really focused on different activity modifications that would ensure that a participant feels successful after they've created something. These are the 4 site-specific objectives that I created to guide my doctoral capstone experience, and they were all successfully met by the end of the semester. So, referring to Objective 1, I produced standardized guides for 3 student-led occupational therapy enrichment services. So, this involved a manual titled Artful Connections, which was a 7-week program that I did in the Work to Work clinic. I also developed an activity guide, The Art of Feeding, which was specific to the Skills for Living clinic, about food art as a therapeutic tool. And then I also created a guide called The Art of Being Me, which was inspired by the pediatric clinic. Referring to Objective 2, this was specific to the Work to Work clinic. I assisted in training student clinicians and facilitating group art sessions, selecting appropriate evaluation methods, and goal setting. Objective 3 really shows how much I was able to advocate for the use of art in occupational therapy, and it was really beneficial for me to provide a project outline as well as my contact information to different faculty members and students to ensure that I was able to provide any necessary materials and provide insight into activities that may be beneficial for the clients that they were working with. And finally, Objective 4 was successfully met through conducting post-project surveys to assess participant and student satisfaction. And this really gave me a good feel for the program sustainability piece of my capstone project. Some implications of my capstone project was the meaningful impact that it had on student clinicians and clients at WMU Unified Clinics. This was really shown through observations and different personal testimonies that I witnessed throughout the program. And that in doing so also showed the importance of producing accessible and flexible materials, both for the student clinicians and for the clients that I was working with. It reinforced holistic clinical practices and the effectiveness of creative therapeutic approaches in occupational therapy practice. I gained insight into art-based interventions, what was most appropriate for the participants I was working with, what activity modifications were most beneficial for them, the importance of flexibility and adaptability in program development and in facilitating the program itself. I got positive feedback from the student clinicians and participants in the Artful Connections program that was done in the Work to Work clinic. It identified some areas for future enhancement. So, for instance, the students felt like it would be beneficial for me to incorporate more backup ideas into my activity manual for Artful Connections for when unforeseen obstacles come up during group sessions. And then the participants also identified future activities that they would like to do, which was painting rocks and also using clay to create art. I also recommended continued use and adaptation of the activity guides and the Artful Connections program in general. And this was for the program sustainability piece of my capstone experience. I wanted to include some pictures to show what activities we did week by week in my Artful Connections program. So the first week we did name art. I used a picture of my name. There are no names of participants throughout the slideshow. The second week we did theme painting, which are the paintings you see here on the right-hand side. The third week we did Zentangles, which really focused on using art as a mindfulness strategy. The fourth week I gave the choice of either creating keychains or jewelry, and all the participants were primarily interested in creating keychains, and you can see some of them even created gift boxes with the intention of giving them to someone else. Then we had the choice of either doing picture frames or tote bags, and all of the participants were specifically interested in creating picture frames, so you see a picture of that here. The next week was a module titled Explore, Revisit, or Finish, and so this gave them an opportunity to either engage in something new, go back to an activity that was their favorite, or finish a piece that they had completed in a previous week, and all of them wanted to do tote bags. So we see a picture of that here. The last week was a Artful Connections reflection session. And so what we did was a creative reflection wall that focused on self-expression and confidence. We also focused on social skills. And then you see here, there's a picture of some completed works that they did throughout the semester. And what's so amazing about Seeing them develop their artistic identity throughout the semester was how much they show themselves in their artwork. They developed their confidence. This was even supported by their caregiver or parents, which was a really meaningful experience for both me and the student clinicians, as well as the participants themselves. And then I wanted to incorporate a picture of some food art activities that I did in the Skills for Living clinic, and these were also incorporated into my Capstone manual, which was the art of feeding. Thank you for watching my presentation on my doctoral capstone experience.